Hello and welcome to another episode of the UK Nats format videos on the Zach Carter channel. Today we are doing an updated video for Spirals versus Sky Strikers. So this is basically small changes to each of the decks, specifically Spiral because previously we were playing it before the ban list, and we had a few comments on the lists themselves. We'll start off with the Sky Striker list here. You can see it's mostly fairly standard. Updating it a bit with those field spells in the deck, and then otherwise fairly normal what we're seeing here. And then for the Spiral list, you can see again much more standard, definitely the going second build for this version of the video, and a few updates here focusing more on the Nightmare combos rather than the sort of AFD plays that we had available to us before the ban list. So those are the decks themselves. Let's get into the matches. Okay, so as we move into game one, you're going to be seeing Jason on the left and myself on the right. The lighting is a little bit poor here, but we tried to up the video quality slightly for that. So we see Jason starting with Ray into Shizuku. Clearly he doesn't have Kagari available there. To recycle, well, he doesn't have a spell to recycle with Kagari, so he brings down the Diablos and puts away a card from the hand, and when he end-phase searches, he gets hit by an Ash Blossom there. So he would have been able to set up Disruption, but because of that Ash he cannot. So in my turn, we see the Resort come down, which means that you can add the Super Agent there. Drone comes out to reset the top of the deck, giving great knowledge so that the Super Agent can come out and take out the multi-roll there. Those two then can make the Helix. We've got fairly standard Spiral plays coming up here, just choosing to place it into the zone pointed at by the Shizuku, then summoning out the Master Plan, adding the Rescue there, and then going into the Unicorn. Unicorn used to put away the Resort by pitching the Rescue. Can then use the Rescue to summon the Master Plan here. So you're going to be seeing this version of the plays that's much more linear and kind of avoids dodging some hand traps. So really what you'd like to do instead of doing this, if you're looking for tips, when you go into the Mermaid here, you should discard for the effect of the Mermaid, and then use the Rescue to bring out the Master Plan as Chainlink 2 there. That way you can dodge some of the effects. But this way we get the search off earlier, so we get to add the Rescue in quicker and then discard that. So there's an Ibli now available. And then we can use these two to make the Goblin. So we're just debating what's actually going on here. It's just the Ibli and Master Plan going into Goblin. Potentially it would be better to summon the Ibli off the effect here. We do get the searches for the Resort and Sleeper. Resort adds the Quick Fix adds the Big Red. So there's an extra summon available there. So potentially instead of leaving the Ibli engraved, you could put it in your opponent's field, and that way you do their extra deck. Sky Striker monster will not be able to float into a Ray, which can be actually really important. So you're going to see that that doesn't happen here. This is definitely something worth learning from, and something that we've picked up from this match. So Big Red brings out the Master Plan, which searches for the other mission. I think that's Assault. And just working out which series of follow-up plays to go into, because we do want to search the Last Resort. So those two go into the Phoenix. Then bring back the Helix and discard a card to summon the Quick Fix. I believe the discarded card was the Assault there. So that searches for the Last Resort, which means that we can now put up a Sleeper Last Resort with a field spell. Although at this point we haven't been hand trapped, so we're definitely trying to push for an OTK here at this point. And I do have an extender in hand beyond this, so I'm basically trying to think of a way that I can attempt to stop Ray from floating into another extra deck monster, which would potentially outback the multi-roll, just in case it becomes relevant. So you do see an illegal Ningetsu here. That should be a Tri-Gate Wizard, which ultimately does not affect the result of the match. It just means that I'm going to be sending away the field spell when I send the Shizuku to grave. which instead you could make the Trigate Wizard. You wouldn't have to give up your own resource, and also it would actually be legal. So definitely go for your Trigate Wizard there, but ultimately it's not going to have any effect on the outcome of this game. So then there's a Griffin put next to it, so the Ray can be summoned when Shizuku leaves the field, but the Griffin stops it from tagging out into anything. A Sleeper comes down. Keep in mind, these monsters are all slightly weaker, so they won't actually be able to put game-winning damage on board. However, I did have a Monster Reborn in hand, and Jason only had, I think, one card in hand left over or something, so we wouldn't have had the resources in order to take that game. So Spyral's winning game 1. Largely from winning the die roll and choosing to go second, and then just pushing through the minimal board that was set up thanks to the Ash Blossom. Jason potentially could have had a Widow Anchor that wouldn't have done much for him given that Resort is available, but it's interesting to see. So I start off with an Upstart Goblin and then put nothing on the board. Basically the idea being that Sky Strikers cannot OTK me without Phantom Sky Blaster, which is actually a new combo which we were not aware of at the time, so his build is not playing the Sky Blaster. So leaving an open board means he's not going to +1 off any of his spells except for Engage. So he starts off by Foolishing a Ray, so this is already screaming that he's got a Diablos in hand, and then he goes for the Engage to add the multi-roll. He then brings down the multi-roll, plays the field spell, so that will get 1 count on it, and then out comes a Ray. So he's just clogging on slightly too many Rays here at this point. When he activates the field spell on the Ray, I play a Ghost Reaper, and then he tags out and brings out, I believe, a Kagari here, which is exactly what I wanted because I only had the Shizuku in my deck, as you can see from the start of the video, so I want to banish all of his Shizukus, and forcing him to make the Kagari early because he wants to add back that Engage is pretty important. But something that potentially could have been done to change this slightly, instead of the way that this was played out, you can see the Diablos is summoned off the trigger of that Kagari. He has triggered the Kagari, and he should be adding back the Engage, but he'll actually do that later in the turn because we just forgot about that. So then he pops the field spell and summons out the Ray. So a slight change, what I could have done is played the cherries as soon as he summoned the Ray, which means that he would have been able to target his own Ray with a field spell, so it would have made a small difference there. Obviously he didn't actually reveal any targets, so it didn't actually matter. And then he punches in with everything that's on board. There's quite a lot of damage, putting me down to 1800 thanks to, I believe, 3 spells. Maybe it's just 2 spells left in the grave at the time. And he's just working out what kind of board he would like to end on. So he does actually have the option to tribute the Ray with the Diablos here in order to take a card out of my hand. So leaving up that big threat, which can be particularly difficult to push past in most decks out at the moment. And even Spyrals, a lot of their cards do target things like Tough, will be targeting your opponent's monsters. All of the Nightmare monsters that deal with things target, so Diablos can be a bit of an issue there. So he's just playing that Engage that he's added back of the Kagari, having taken a card out of my hand with the Diablos, and then just choosing what to add. He's only going to have one other card in hand, so he goes for the Widow Anchor, and then elects to set one from hand, which you're basically guaranteed is going to be the Widow Anchor because otherwise it's going to be some other form of disruption which he didn't set earlier. And then in the end phase he sets the Engage there. Potentially he should have left it there if he thought he could activate his Widow Anchor and then be able to set it anyway, because I can definitely remove that with the Spiral cards. So I start off with a Terraforming into Resort, and suddenly I'm not going to be able to be targeted by the Widow Anchor, which is a huge deal. So I add a Tough here, because Tough Super Agent is basically Tough drone, Super Agent Drone when you're going second. Tough will target the set Widow Anchor because obviously we know, well, the set's unknown, which is almost certainly the set Widow Anchor. Calling it right with Spell. Out comes the Super Agent to get rid of the Engage, which will be banished because it was set by the multi-roll. And then suddenly we have 2 Spiral names and we're facing down a Diablos and a Kagari, so that's not too much of an issue. So one thing Jason was pointing out, he could have played the Widow Anchor on his own Kagari, That way he would have had 1 count on the multi-roll. However, the issue with that is that he's definitely going to be losing the multi-roll, because he's playing against SPYRAL and the ability to pop things is just too great if he hasn't got a live hand trap available. So we see basically the same combo as the last time coming out here, except we have a different zone to occupy because it's a Kagari that we're dealing with instead of a Shizuku. So out comes the Mermaid. Mermaid will be able to make the Diablos weaker, which is pretty important as well. Then comes an Ibli, and we'll go into the Nightmare Goblin again with these 2 monsters in order to get the extra normal summon, I believe. Just debating whether or not I want to play a different card in order to start pulling apart his board, but I do go for the Goblin. I believe I discarded a big red there. And then I give him the Ibli, which is obviously, as we discussed in the previous game, a much better play. It means that his Kagari cannot float into anything, so we don't have to worry about it too much. I then get the double search, same as last time, the quick fix adding the big red, because there are 2 big reds in the deck. We do have Sleeper in hand now as well. Then bring back the Master Plan with the Rescue. Add the Assault. And again, I think you're going to be seeing what is potentially a bit of a misplay here in an attempt to deal with the board. I do have to get over the Diablos, which is quite a big deal. But I could have tried to, so in this combo I'm not going to be going into Decode Talker, which is another potential out for the Diablos. So instead of doing that, I bring everything back, make the Cerberus to deal with the Kagari so I don't have to worry about the Ray floating at any point. I can bring back the quick fix with the Helix on board, thanks to the big red. And then I go into, I believe I make the Trigate here using the quick fix and the Goblin. But I could have played this a little bit differently. I could have used the Mermaid to make the Trigate. The problem then is that my monsters are weaker than Diablos. It just depends how you want to play through with your combo. So here comes the Trigate, which is going to banish the multi-roll. And then out comes Griffin. We're not going to set anything with it, but we are going to bring out the Sleeper. This basically just means that we're floodgating him out of the turn. It would have been more damage to actually leave the other Link monsters on board, and then I could have put Sleeper on the other side of the Trigate actually, and that way it would have been pointing to something. But that's going to be pretty much it. There's nothing that Jason's going to be able to come back with. He's only got the single card in hand. And I can punch over Diablos because Mermaid is making all of his monsters 1,000 attack points weaker, so the Diablos is only on 2,000, so it's much easier to deal with than without the Mermaid. So that's another potential way for dealing with it, other than, say, a Decode Talker that you've had to buff up. So thanks for watching this video. Be sure to let us know of any changes that you'd make to the plays, the deck lists themselves. Hopefully this has provided some insight into how the matchup goes following the previous ban list. Obviously the deck lists that we're seeing from Sky Strikers are constantly developing. You know, there's the Phantom Skyblaster OTK available, there's the Trickstar build, which I believe also has an OTK available, and it's probably looking like the stronger of the two at the moment, but definitely worth checking out the lists that emerge from things like YCS New Jersey, plus the Irish Nationals that went on over the last weekend. Congratulations to everyone who went there and did so well. Both of those events actually. Loads of guys from the UK did fantastically at each of those events. It's definitely something worth celebrating. Thanks for watching this video again, and hopefully we'll see you guys in the next one.